Modern-day outlaw Sturgill Simpson is on tour this fall, and in the alt-country universe, it's looking like it's the event of the season. His 3-hour sets have been universally praised for their energy, musicianship, and timeliness. And his newest album, released under the pseudonym Johnny Blue Skies, has received praise from fans and critics alike, with many people saying it's his best material ever. Among alternative country fans, Sturgill has achieved legendary status, not only for his unique voice and incredible songwriting chops, but also for his no BS attitude. Sturgill is both an outlaw and an artist in the purest sense of the words. He lives by his own code and sets of standards, and when he sets out to make an album, he's gonna make the album he wants to make, not anybody else. That guiding philosophy has made him polarizing to some, but I think has done more to actually cement him as one of the most interesting and influential artists of the modern era. So before you head out to see Sturgill this fall, take a moment to get familiar with who he is as an artist and person, if you can even really do that. We're going to take a look at 8 songs that outline Sturgill's career development, 7 from his studio albums, and 1 very important producer credit that would influence the future of country music today. To be clear, this is not a collection of my favorite Sturgill Simpson songs. Rather, it's a selection of 8 songs that I think tell his career story and give us insight into who he is as an artist and as a person. Now, before I go any further, I want to address something that many Sturgill fans would probably be thinking. Sturgill is a very complicated person who frequently wrestles with identity in his songwriting, so what gives me the right to talk about who he is? And frankly, I think that's a fair point, and one that Sturgill would probably actually agree with. So what I've tried to do is reflect back some of what Sturgill has told us about himself through his lyrics and also through interviews, and not try to make any large, audacious claims about someone that I've never met before. So take everything with a grain of salt, but I tried to make sure that this stayed true to what Sturgill has shared about his life. We're going to start with the first song on Sturgill's first album, Life Ain't Fair and the World Is Mean. Sometimes an artist's first album won't necessarily be a great taste of who they're going to become in a long run, but this song really served as a mission statement for who Sturgill would be. It was our first taste that Sturgill would be a true outlaw, rejecting the Nashville establishment. This song adopts more traditional country aesthetics, which at the time was somewhat revolutionary. This was right at the height of the bro country era, and so having something that ran counter to that was definitely a statement. Sturgill was choosing to live his way, rather than taking the easy path to success by bending to popular conventions of the time. However, as we know, a music career is a very difficult path to success. By all accounts, early in his career, Sturgill was living hard, playing lots of gigs, and trying to do everything he could to make the career work. A lot of people saw the potential in him after High Top Mountain, but he hadn't had that breakout moment yet. And by the time Sturgill went in to record Metamodern sounds in country music, he was at a bit of a crossroads. He could see the difficulty that this lifestyle brings, especially when you're just trying to make a name for yourself. And the song Life of Sin serves as a reflection of some of the hardships and debauchery around being a musician, the vices that often come with it, and giving up so much in pursuit of a dream. And even if the song could be fictionalized, it's probably a pretty good reflection of where Sturgill was in life as he was going into this session. Sturgill was not expecting Metamodern sounds in country music to blow up. After putting years into his music career with only minor success, and with his wife pregnant with his son, Sturgill thought that this could be his last chance to put it all down on tape. But that wouldn't be the case, because this album was released to huge critical acclaim. Producer Dave Cobb was starting to have some heat around him after producing Jason Isbell's Southeastern, and this album really caught people's attention as something totally different in the country music landscape. And as Sturgill's star rose, it became very evident that he was an interesting figure to watch. His psychedelic leanings and his references to Eastern spirituality really set him apart from a lot of his contemporaries. It was just something totally different, and his public persona was really fascinating to watch. Sturgill can be a bit ornery and really tells people what he actually thinks. The public also became aware of a lot of interesting things in Sturgill's past, like the fact that he had been in the Navy and that he had worked on the railroad for a while, which gave him a lot of country music credibility. Sturgill's growing fame and his move into family life came to a head on his next album, A Sailor's Guide to Earth, where Sturgill reflects on everything that's led him to this point and what it means in the context of his newfound fatherhood. This is reflected most directly in the song Keep It Between the Lines, where Sturgill is speaking directly to his son, sharing hard-learned lessons so that his son might not make the same mistakes that he has. Because of the demands of touring and what it takes to be successful in the music industry, Sturgill found himself watching his son grow up through photos and text messages. Keep It Between the Lines is a permanent record of the values he wants his son to understand, putting them on tape because he knows he won't always be around to share them. Sturgill's family life is central to who he is and impacts his career in a lot of different ways, as well as his self-image, so more of this is going to come up. But around this same time, another songwriter from Eastern Kentucky was starting to make some waves. And thanks to an introduction by Sturgill's drummer Miles Miller, Sturgill agreed to produce Tyler Childers' breakout album Purgatory alongside Eastern Kentucky music legend Dave Ferguson. This is really a match made in heaven, like real dream team material to have Sturgill Simpson working on Tyler Childers' album. And I think the song where they most closely connect has to be in Childers' universal sound, which sonically is a big departure from the more country-leaning vibes of the rest of the album. And I'm not saying that this song sounds more like Sturgill, just more that I think Sturgill would kind of dig that energy because he switches things up so much, but also because it deals in spirituality, which is a topic that Sturgill is not a stranger to at all. You could almost see the song as a spiritual partner to Sturgill's Turtles All the Way Down. Tyler has gone on to become one of the most beloved and influential artists in country music, and getting these two Kentucky boys together may have set the course for what a lot of modern country music has become, returning to some more neo-traditional roots, and Zach Bryan is so clearly influenced by Tyler Childers that you can draw a really direct line there. While Sturgill's star continued to rise, the pressure of being in the public eye was beginning to get to him. In addition, he was beginning to feel a lot of the constraints of the industry, and began to increasingly show defiance and dissatisfaction with the way the music industry worked. A Sailor's Guide to Earth won Best Country Album at the Grammys, but didn't get a single nod from the CMAs or the ACMs, leading to a hilarious incident where Sturgill posted up outside of Bridgestone Arena in Nashville, busking during the CMA Awards, with his Grammy Award sitting in his guitar case and a sign that said "Struggling Country Artist." Sturgill also used this opportunity to raise money for the ACLU, which I appreciate that he tied his point to a good cause. Sometime in the period following Sailor's Guide also, Sturgill said that he was working on a 5-album arc, and once he reached the end of it, he was going to be done making music. That's when Sturgill shocked everyone and followed up Sailor's Guide to Earth with Sound and Fury, a guitar and synth-driven rock album where Sturgill declares war on the music industry. This album is wild. Lyrically, it's often crude and makes use of shocking imagery to illustrate the ways the music industry is predatory towards artists, but it's also very clever in the way it does this. Sturgill laments the way the business side of the music industry has ruined his relationship with art, how it's put strain on his personal relationships, and how it's impacted his ability to trust others. After achieving the kind of success most young artists can only dream of, Sturgill realized how constraining and toxic his fame actually was to him, as well as the effects it was having on his mental health. He had achieved great success, but the actual realities of what that meant day to day removed all joy from the equation. This whole album, Sturgill's feeling lonely and bitter and like he can't trust anybody. And the song Make Art Not Friends finds Sturgill alone, closing out the opportunity to interact with other people, deciding he just wants to stay home and wallow in his pain. This is an incredible song, but it was a really low point for Sturgill personally. You can tell he felt these things very deeply, and I mean the whole thing kind of just plays like a mental health crisis. In Make Art Not Friends, you can tell he's really feeling it bad, and honestly I feel for him there. Sturgill also had a lot of antics during this area, like he spent $1.2 million making the record and also the corresponding anime film to try and drive a wedge between himself and the label. And in a very public interview, Sturgill threatened to quit music unless his label Elektra dropped him. And following this album, Sturgill and Childers were set to go on the road for a national tour. I actually had tickets to see them in Washington, D.C. on March 15th, 2020. And then... so the pandemic happened. Forced off the road, actually having contracted COVID while he was touring in Europe, and then also with the just regular social distancing that all of us had to do in that point in time, I think things started to change for Sturgill a little bit internally. This period of time may have caused him to step back and reevaluate how he wants to approach the world. I can't speak with any sort of authority about what would have changed for him during this point in time, but Sturgill before lockdown versus Sturgill after lockdown feel like two totally different people in terms of attitude. It could have been because he had more time to connect with family, because he could make music just for the joy of making music. His friend and mentor John Prine passed away early on in COVID, which I'm sure deeply affected Sturgill. And with some time to process things, Sturgill still found his way back to music. During this period, he recut much of his old song catalog as bluegrass songs. These two albums were called Cut and Grass, and they were a return to form and also a return to joy. It actually really sounds like he's having fun with this, and if you watch the Ryman recording from that period in time where it was just like a live stream, it looks like Sturgill's just really enjoying himself, and so are the rest of the musicians with him. Obviously, that point in time was really hard for everyone, and maybe the opportunity just to create for the sake of creating was a great way to reignite Sturgill's passion for music and connect him back with his Kentucky roots. Off these two albums, no song sticks out to me more than Hobo Cartoon, which was a song that Merle Haggard wrote the lyrics for and texted them to Sturgill. Merle and Sturgill had this really interesting relationship with one another. They were good friends in the latter year of Merle's life. They also had a special connection around the railroad, Sturgill having worked for Union Pacific, and Merle having hopped trains and traveled around on boxcars when he was a kid. And lyrically, this song echoes back to that time in Merle's life. While Merle wrote the lyrics, Sturgill arranged the music, and got the blessing from Merle Haggard's widow and kids before recording it. It's a very fitting and touching tribute to a close friend who also was so influential in Sturgill's life and career. I also feel like the song is a spiritual companion to the song Pan Bowl, which was the bonus track in Metamodern Sounds in country music. Both deal in nostalgia and the memory of someone else who's important to them. Now, Sturgill had made that statement about the 5-album arc, and everyone was kind of under the impression that the Cuttin Grass albums did not fall into that category, especially because for the most part they were recutting songs from Sturgill's previous catalog. But what we got as the final album in that 5-album arc, I think, is something no one really expected. The Ballad of Dude and Juanita is about a 30-minute long concept album that's very different than anything else Sturgill's ever done. It's reminiscent of an old western, tells the story of old dude whose wife Juanita gets kidnapped, and his journey to go rescue her and kill her kidnapper. It's also a tribute to his grandparents. I believe his granddad loved old westerns and went by that nickname as well. Because of the nature of the album, it's kind of really hard to say, like, what song off this album is Sturgill Simpson? What defines this era of his career? But I get the sense on the song Played Out, Sturgill is actually channeling a little something from inside himself into the dude's situation. In this song, Dude is treating his wounds and grieving his dying dog, and I don't think it's too big of a stretch to think that Sturgill is writing abstractly here, thinking about his recent run-ins with the music industry, the ways that has wounded him, and how it's left him feeling played out. I think thematically and just knowing where Sturgill was in his life at this point, this song feels the most like it's him. The Ballad of Dude and Juanita concluded Sturgill Simpson's 5-album arc. Following this, he disappeared from the public eye a little bit, only really showing up in some acting roles, and it left a lot of fans wondering, is this the end of Sturgill Simpson? Before we go on, I want to give one honorable mention to the performance of Call to Arms from Saturday Night Live. This is one of the single greatest musical moments I've ever seen in my life. You have got to see this. It is crazy. And if you've listened to Sturgill Simpson before and you're like, yeah, I don't really get it, watch this. Watch this, it's so incredible. From the very beginning of his career, Sturgill's identity has been a bit of a conundrum. Even reflecting that on some of these t-shirts they used to sell that say, who the f*** is Sturgill Simpson? And so when Sturgill returned on his album Passage du Desir, under the alias Johnny Blue Skies, fans rejoiced that we hadn't reached the end of Sturgill Simpson, but we're a little bit confused. Knowing that was under a stage name, no one really knew what this next album was going to be. Sturgill had used the name Johnny Blue Skies on a collaboration with EDM artist Diplo in the past, and so some fans speculated, like, are we about to get that? And I'll speak for myself, I was really relieved when that was not the case. Sturgill spent the better part of a year traveling the world, and came back with this album that wrestled heavily with identity. While it's referenced throughout the album, Who I Am is the most direct song in reference to this, including the lyric, "They don't ask you what your name is when you get up to heaven, and thank God I couldn't tell her if I had to who I am." In the lyrics to this song, Sturgill also references back to Life Ain't Fair and the World Is Mean, which kind of brings everything full circle. And listening to the album, I don't think Sturgill ever really figures out who he is in this, and maybe that's okay. After all, does anyone ever really know who they are fully? I mean, we all constantly change and grow throughout life. I don't think you really can fully know who you are. But it's clear that Sturgill wrestles with his sense of self. Musically, though, Sturgill feels really self-assured on this album. This album both feels like a culmination and an improvement upon everything he's ever done in the past. Lyrically, though, that air of uncertainty lingers. I think we'll hear many more iterations of Sturgill Simpson, and honestly, I can't wait to hear all of them. I know Sound and Fury was pretty polarizing for Sturgill fans, but I loved it. I've enjoyed every evolution of his career, no matter what style he's going for. And I think that's because Sturgill has the self-awareness to know when he's making a quality album, no matter the style he chooses to make it in. I'm anxiously awaiting whatever Sturgill has next in store for us, and I'm really enjoying this current era. In summary, Sturgill is an artist who lives by his own code. He doesn't care what other people think, he just wants to make the art that he wants to create. And that transcends genre, but it's always true to him. You can tell that he believes in what he's doing with every fiber of his being, even if he doesn't really fully understand who that being is. Are you going to go see Sturgill on tour this fall? Let me know in the comments below. And check out these 8 songs if you want to get as close as we can to the heart of Sturgill Simpson. I'm Brent Funkhauser from Red Moon Media. If you like this, please like, comment, and subscribe. I do other music commentary on this channel, so follow along for more videos.